of COVID, this had an impact because of all these issues that are highlighted here in this slide. Since I have more slides, I'll go over them quickly. These are just for reference also that I'll actually provide to the organizers. So how can we address this digital divide? So we have to look at the complete ecosystem. It's not the connectivity. It has to be related to the other aspects, the terminals, the literacy, broadband availability. Similarly, access to special groups like persons with disabilities. How are they going to access the network? So that's one type of ecosystem. The other, and then how, what will they use it for? That's another one, like local content, or they just need to use whatever is available there. So that's another aspect that we need to look at. Then we have, of course, policies, regulations, human resource availability of that, and funding that is required to not only connect people, but have the content, have the services available for them. So in ITU, we are working on many different aspects, and one of them is called the ITU Broadband Transmission Map, where we cover across the world. We have the maps for different areas, and we look at the where the microwaves are, which areas are covered through the satellite earth stations are, the mobile coverage, the internet exchange points. So these are very good from planning point of view if you want to plan a network. Just to show you an example, we did some studies, for example, with UNICEF. So this was for just specifically for school connectivity, and this is what we were able to find out in different countries, how schools are connected, whether they have 3G coverage, 4G coverage, only 2G coverage, or no coverage at all. So these are just the highlights. Similarly, we have for the connectivity part, we have developed a tool which actually identifies the best technology available for the last mile and many other features. So if there is an interest, I can provide more details on that. Then we also have key recommendations from the policy and regulatory point of view. One of the quickest one in the current situation is to actually issue more spectrum, either free of cost or on deferred payments. And there are many other recommendations that are there for the policymakers to follow in order to have a good digital infrastructure. Some of the initiatives that we are doing in Indonesia, one of them is related to, as I mentioned, so that in many of the countries, many of the places in the world, connectivity is there. In Indonesia also, like out of the 75,000 villages, we have about more than 60,000. There is some kind of availability of the internet, but the issue is what are they going to use it for? So this is a concept, the smart village concept that we are working with Ministry of Villages, Cominfo, World Bank, and UN Ops, is to actually provide a platform where all these services, health, education, and agriculture, all these services are provided using one platform. So you don't have to have several platforms to do that. There's one platform with all the related arrangements with that. So these are some of the expected results that we would like to have. The first one would be that we need to have the connectivity, then the services, organizing. You see, just availability of services doesn't mean that people will start using it. You have to have, especially in the vulnerable population, especially population who lack the internet access, like the women, you have to involve them. Similarly, you have to have the synergies. And this is the change that we expect that is going to happen from the infrastructure point of view, from the preventive health point of view, education point of view, and skills point of view. This is what we believe will happen when this is implemented. Similarly, another initiative that we have is known as the Digital Transformation Center. So this is basically along with Cisco and ComInfo. BPPTIK is also the organization under the ComInfo that is collaborating with ITU and Cisco. And currently there are two courses being offered to enhance the digital skills, and both of them are in a local language, Bahasa, that people can take. They are free of cost, but of course you have to have the internet availability. Similarly, we are also looking at another program along with UNICEF and a few other partners, which is to connect the schools, and this is called the Giga Project. And this consists of several steps: mapping of school, finding the financial model using economy of scales, and then connecting the schools, and then connecting this after the school is connected to empower the community through that. So just to conclude a few things, there is definitely a digital divide in Indonesia. We need to bridge this gap. We need to connect everyone, but before it's not possible in a single step. So we have to have some initiative along with partners that we need to take, like smart village, like connecting the schools, and also the digital literacy programs. And there are possibly others also. So we look forward for your comments, and we also look forward to work with you. This is my email address, and please let me know if I can be of any assistance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Ismail. So basically, ITU just discussed like the rural connectivity importance for poverty and cultural, and then the access is going through the program called Smart Village. It's a platform service for health, government, and it's under one platform to connect the village. And we should also involve women and support remote educations, and one of their program is for Giga Project, who supports schools and provide the connectivity. So the next one, Chris, are you available for presentation now?
Yeah, I think we've got the permissions to share the screen. So Rati, I think you have it, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Great. So thanks for that, Ismail, by the way. That was very interesting. And I think all of these presentations will follow on from each other, and then the actual open discussion will be interesting to see where we know there are connections, but where they are in concrete terms from a program point of view. So I'm going to quickly talk through the UK's Digital Access Programme, which some of you will be familiar with already, others perhaps not so, and how it connects to these issues in Indonesia and what our main aims are. So if you could just move to the next one, Rati. Thank you. So firstly, just a very brief overview of this programme and where it fits in. So it comes under the UK's Prosperity Fund, which is a coordinated sort of scheme of funding development work in mainly middle-income developing countries and also emerging economies. So within this, there are two departments: the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, that's recently obviously been merged between the Foreign Office and DFID, and the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport, DCMS, who are one of our digital leads, as well as GDS, of course, Warren, in the UK government. So the overall aim of the programme across 5 countries, I should say, which you can see there, Indonesia one of them, is to support inclusive, affordable, but also safe digital access, particularly for underserved communities. And this underpinning sort of initiative is aimed to support Indonesia with digital ecosystem growth and broader digital development, both from an economic and social angle. So if we can move to the next one, thank you. Thank you. So the program is structured into 3 pillars. The first pillar, entitled Models and Enablers, is essentially looking at digital skills, literacy development, and unlocking enablers of digital access. So on the infrastructure and connectivity side as well. So we're looking at where are innovative business models that could promote affordable and sustainable extension of internet access, particularly for more excluded populations, especially in remote regions of Indonesia. But then also, when you've got that, or if you've got that, what comes next in terms of digital skills development to contribute to the local economy and support education using digital access. And I think the Common Room project, which I'll talk about in a minute, which is sort of the main theme of this whole 3-day event, is one of our best examples of that so far. The second pillar, on trust and resilience, is focused on cybersecurity, so online safety and security, so supporting partner countries' capacity to prevent and respond to cybersecurity risks and harms, and that can affect governments, businesses, and citizens, particularly vulnerable groups, again, that are at higher risk of online abuse or exploitation. And there's a couple of projects we have in the Digital Access Programme already that are addressing this issue in collaboration with the Indonesian government. So we're keen to continue that and expand it into broader areas. And I think other partners who are on the panel here are also doing similar things. So there's opportunities there. And the third pillar is the Tech Hub. So this is focusing on the economic side more. So supporting and stimulating local digital economies, building high-end digital skills and forging partnerships between different tech sectors. And particularly looking at where international businesses, including UK firms, but not necessarily exclusively from the UK, can support the scale up of certain Indonesian tech startups. So that's sort of like a product of the first and second pillar to support Indonesia on the journey. If we can move to the next slide, thank you. Thanks. So I'm just going to run through a few examples of projects that we currently have underway to highlight how it's happening on the ground. So this project, of which the Rural ICT Camp at Point 3 is what we're here for today, actually a 3-day event. Should have been physical, of course, but has to be virtual now. Comes under the Common Room Network Foundation project on Indigenous Community Networks Platform and Tech Hub for Rural Innovation. So this is specifically in Kasepuhan Ciptagala area of West Java, a rather remote community, to address internet connectivity in that community, but also to develop local digital skills for the community. And the actual community training center and media lab for Kasepuhan Ciptagala and the surrounding villages was officially open yesterday at the start of the event. So that's a good success. During COVID-19, of course, other challenges have come in that directly impact this. So the project was very innovative and flexible to reallocate certain funding and focus on some of the immediate public health risks in the community as well. And the launch of an ebook in Sundanese, the local language, that was more accessible for the local community than normal standard Bahasa Indonesian, to look at some of the risks, public health risks, and this was done in coordination with local community health centres, Puskamas, and local government, of course, in West Java. That was successful and had impact in terms of spreading awareness as the COVID-19 pandemic developed in Indonesia. But back to the core aims, the training centre and media lab development, which was launched officially yesterday, is more of an opportunity to use the connectivity, some of the closing of that connectivity gap through this specific project to actually look at enhancing digital skills and innovation for that community, but then looking at how it can be used as a model perhaps to collaborate further with the Indonesian government on scaling up to wider communities. And of course, obviously there, the Rural ICT Camp at the bottom, which is gathering international multi-stakeholders to look at broader rural ICT development issues in Indonesia and how we can coordinate, hence why we are here today. On to the next one, please. Thank you. Another quick example, an organisation we are working with in Indonesia, the Institute for Criminal Justice Reform, ICJR. This specific project is looking at, as you guessed it, the justice sector. So it's how can we strengthen access to justice through technology? Not an area that is widely looked at actually by many organisations, but very important because digital or lack of digital access can actually significantly impact both people's access to basic legal information and services, but also understanding and awareness of their rights, sometimes under the law. So we think it's a very important initiative. So this organization, ICHR, working with them on an e-learning platform to strengthen aspects of access to legal information for the public specific to COVID-19. So looking at labor rights, consumer rights, and civil rights. And those modules are currently being developed now before they're launched on the e-learning platform. Also a location-based web platform for legal assistance to make access to legal aid organisation a lot easier for local communities who often have to travel far to cities and pay quite a lot of money for legal advice if they need it, when it could be a lot more affordable by enhancing digital access to that information. And then finally, web platform for legal document automation. So sometimes, you know, it could be land disputes, for example, or even purchasing and sale of land that can be very complicated for communities. And there are standardized forms and ways this can be done through using technology that the project's trying to promote. On to the next one. COVID-19 response, I've touched on some of this, but there's just some examples there. So Lapor COVID-19, specifically on data integration with 3 regional governments of Indonesia, East Java, West Java, and DKI Jakarta. That's a very direct COVID-19 response project. Sehati Tele-CTG, looking more at maternal care, using a telemedicine platform for midwives on risk factors, enhancing risk factors detection. And that's already in operation, so very, very important as well. And then obviously Ministry of Education and Ministry of Health, broader, more longer term programs on digital literacy, remote learning, and with the Ministry of Health on the telemedicine regulation, looking at it from a digital inclusivity point, but also a data protection and cybersecurity standards point, where we can collaborate with Indonesia as that regulation is implemented. And then finally, on to the next slide. I think there's one more. A virtual training with people with disabilities. This is a program under the Pillar 3 of the Digital Access Program. So I won't sort of address all of the information there, but specifically, there are clear benefits, obviously, to enhancing digital skills for people with specific disabilities. So it could be, one example, hearing impediments. There are beneficiaries as part of this program who obviously are in that category. So have really benefited and are finding it very useful to gather more opportunities through training in digital skills, but looking at it from an accessibility point of view, and enhancing digitally ready businesses with and for people with disabilities in Indonesia. So we're very proud and happy to be working on that program with an organization called Visible, which we can tell you more about. And then the final slide, I think, next is just some priority areas, which I think will spark the discussion after everybody else has presented, of what we want to do in the program on the digital access point of view, the sort of models and enablers angle, as the program develops. So digital strategy and supporting the government at a sort of systemic level. Universal Service Obligation Fund, are there more areas for greater levels of private sector investment that we could collaborate with Bhakti in particular on? Also looking at community-based management of ICT infrastructure, such as the Common Room model in Kasapur and Tagala. Can that be scaled up, and how to break down some challenges? Affordability is key, I've highlighted there, which obviously we can discuss. TV white space, very important at filling certain gaps in remote regions, but it needs more engagement with private sector based on what has happened in other countries. So I guess the question is how to do that effectively. And then also issues around national digital literacy strategy, which Ismail obviously touched on. important ministries that we are engaging with, but still need to do more on. And then I think the point that will lead on to Warren's presentation is a lot of this, where you look at public services, so the e-delivery of public services and how it's based on inclusive and user-centered design is a very important point that the program is working with Indonesia on that strategy in particular. So I think I'll stop there, and that probably leads on quite nicely to Warren's presentation from GDS. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So as you can see that Digital Access Program have a wide range of focus programs and focusing on marginalized communities. So next we have UK Government Digital Service. Warren Smith, please. Warren, take your discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to try again to share my screen, and that seems to be working this time, so that's good. Bear with me one moment, please. And hopefully you can see what I can see, which is a big blue slide. Can you? Good. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. So yeah, I'm Warren Smith. I'm from the UK's Government Digital Service, and I'm the Global Digital Marketplace Programme Director. We're also an activity that forms part of the portfolio of Prosperity Fund activities working in Indonesia. I'm also thematic group lead for the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, their working party of senior digital government officials, as well as for the ITU, for their United for Smart Sustainable Cities U4SSE implementation program. So without further ado, I shall move on. So yeah, everything we're doing is all about helping to bring public procurement into the 21st century, into the internet era, and really focusing public procurement on social purpose and how that can help to be a catalyst for achieving the SDGs. We have three very high level objectives for the work that we're doing: improving systems that govern public spending, and that's throughout the life cycle of public spending. Improve scrutiny through better quality and open data, as well as building institutional capability and capacity to ensure sustainable change. So we're very much focused on the e-government side of things, as Chris nicely segued into my presentation. We're aligned with multilateral organizations' own objectives and strategic directions, such as the OECD's Clean Biz Initiative, which in this case describes to successfully achieve the SDGs, take advantage of the opportunities provided by digital technologies and open data throughout the entire public procurement cycle to address rising expectations of transparency and access to information. And also in terms of the ITU, and this is a very frequently referred to document that I use a lot, is the SDG Digital Investment Framework. And here on the conclusions, page 44, it talks about governments should engage in, and donors are recommended to fund, pilots to provide global reference examples of how a cross-sectoral approach to technology products, policies, practices, and people can help the digital services reach the underserved more efficiently and effectively. And that's effectively what we are doing through the Global Digital Marketplace Program, is focusing on products, policies, practices, and people, all the Ps. And also very relevant to today is the Smart Villages Blueprint, which in this case is piloted in Niger, West Africa. But again, this is talking about internationally established tendering practices. So smart villages would rely on fair and transparent government products and services procurement to establish, run, maintain, and sustain them. And under the on page 33, establishing systems for fair procurement, it makes reference to the OECD ICT Commissioning Playbook, which is an artifact that the Global Digital Marketplace Program delivered in the end of 2018, but we've now evolved that onto to the next level. So what do we mean when we talk about buying digitally with social purpose? Well, for us, it's all about focusing on the culture, the mindset, and the capability in public procurement. And as Chris nicely introduced, this is all about, and it's a cornerstone principle of understanding and meeting users' needs. And that's the citizens, the businesses, anybody who has to interact with government in order to go about their daily life. It's all about being outcomes orientated, experimental and flexible, being multidisciplinary, agile, and collaborative coalition builders. So looking for building communities of practice who are the advocates for systemic change. And it's also about that life cycle approach, the holistic approach to public spending, looking at what happens before public procurement, during procurement and after public procurement, and also using open data in a meaningful way to be genuinely deliberative and participative with civil society, and using that open data to build trust, increase transparency, and change the relationship between civil society and the state. So we've been speaking to lots of people, users around the world, mostly, well, certainly more recently, all virtually. We've got some really good relationships in Indonesia in terms of the national government, as well as the local governments in West Java province, Bandung City and Jakarta. But we've also been talking to various other governments around the world, 16 in fact in total, broader than the scope of what we're doing in terms of the work in Indonesia, but nonetheless we get a very good cross-section of needs of our users. And when we talk about users, we are effectively trying to understand, you know, what are their needs, the different types of users, and the various pain points that they're experiencing in public procurement. And well, generally, when we talk about public procurement, there's quite a lot of pain involved. So we're trying to design out that pain through understanding the needs of our users. And through the work that we're doing that builds on the ICT commissioning playbook that was referenced in the Smart Village Blueprint, we've been developing a growing collection of case studies from around the world, more recently relating to emergency procurement because of COVID-19, but also fundamentally linking to the SDGs in terms of gender equality, social inclusion, the economic empowerment of women, indigenous people, and also being sustainable in terms of ICT procurement. So we have more in the pipeline, and these help to illustrate how to practically implement the guidelines that we've developed with sponsorship from ICT, IUCB and ITU, and to help people to step forward in terms of internet era approaches to public procurement. And the digital buying guide, which we have developed, is available currently in 3 languages: English, Spanish and Bahasa Indonesia. It's fully accessible. It's compliant with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1, which is developed by the World Wide Web Consortium to AA level. So irrespective of the device you use it on, it is fully responsive. And in terms of what's next, well, we are launching the digital buying guide in 2 days' time. So we'll be announcing that at the OECD's annual meeting of their working party of senior digital government officials. And we're also working with the ITU to promote that through their networks. And we've also developed a plan for the future, which focuses on 3 core areas: community elements, so it's connecting officials from around the world to help share better practices and learn from each other; resources such as simplified ICT contracts, which is actually being spearheaded by LKPP in Indonesia, as well as standards for assuring ICT investment plans and service delivery, which links very nicely to the ITU's SDG investment framework, as well as a set of indicators to help build capability across a number of thematic areas. We've started with gender equality and social inclusion in public procurement and emergency procurement as well, so very relevant to the COVID. And I look forward to sharing that with you all literally as soon as it's public, which will be at the end of this week. So thank you very much. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you, Warren. Basically, GDS just tell us that they also working for Indonesia LKPP for digital buying guidelines. So they also made their website inclusive, so even in the highest level. So they also want us, maybe we can explore further their future plans on community elements, resources, and indicators. Thank you, Warren. And then the next one, I will Mike Johnson from APC, if Mike Johnson's here. Okay. Yeah, maybe Mbak Grace. Mbak Grace Palayukan from Australia-Indonesia Partnership for Governance for Growth, Kolaborasi Masyarakat dan Pelayanan untuk Kesejahteraan Kompak. Mbak Grace, silakan untuk memulai presentasinya. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Alan.
Sorry, Alan. Sorry to jump in. I think Mike is here. I just think he's on mute. I can see him on the screen.
Oh, okay. No problem. Yes.
Sorry. Yes.
Sorry.
Just hunting for the mute.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe we can
So
go
all
for
right,
mute.
everyone?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah,
And
Mbak
are
Grace,
you able
mungkin,
to see my presentation?
yes, thank you. So yeah, we can start with Mike Jensen from APC. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much, Carlina. Good morning or good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to this session here, where I'll be talking about the Association for Progressive Communications Community Networks program, which we call How Can the Unconnected Connect Themselves? So for those of you who don't know the APC, we're the Association for Progressive Communications. We started in the pre-internet days in the very early 1990s as an association of NGO network access providers. And then we've expanded to about 50 or 60 members, mainly in the global south, as an association of NGOs working on issues relating to more equitable internet access. APC is an ITUD sector member and has UN ECOSOC status, so we engage a lot in the global and regional policy spaces in particular to help governments basically develop better policies and regulations around providing more internet access, better quality internet access, and also improved use of it. And this is also around guarding against abuses in the internet. And we have a large women's program, and many people engaged in issues such as online violence against women. Now, the ABC program has really been stimulated in the area of connectivity by the slowing mobile growth that we've observed over the last few years. And this has really been quite extensive in the marked, I guess, since about 2017, as the networks have been expanding steadily and growing beyond the urban areas in which they were started.
Mike, sorry.
Similarly,
sorry?
we've been seeing the internet
Mike?
growth steadily slowing down.
Sorry, Mike. I think
Yes, can you hear me?
we lost your screen. So can you reshare again? Thank you.
Sure. Are you able to see the slide now? It says internet growth slowing. Great. Okay, so yes, we've been tracking this for a while in ABC, looking at how the prospects are for connecting the unconnected. And as a result of this, we've, sorry, I'll just skip forward here, is to try and come up with an analysis of the key issues. And I think Dr. Ismail has already covered these in detail. But in terms of the actual access to infrastructure that we've been focusing on in ABC, obviously the main issue is that as the networks grow, the population that's looking for connectivity is much lower income, is more expensive to reach, being further away and often in more sparsely populated areas. So it's getting increasingly expensive for traditional national commercial mobile networks to get to these remote places. There's a lack of basic infrastructure in terms of power and roads, high costs of getting out to these locations, especially lack of technical skills in supporting remote base stations, which may take many hours to reach on poor roads. And of course, the investment of the operators is focused on upgrading to the latest network technologies of 4 and 5G mainly, and fiber connections in some cases. And so this has meant that there's little left over for those unprofitable or less profitable areas in the remote and rural developing countries. And at the same time, most government subsidy models have not all been all that effective in broadening reach so far. So there's been an increasing pool of demand that has been unsatisfied. So what we've seen is that now a number of local connectivity initiatives are emerging to fill this gap based on building out from what we would call the first mile rather than the last mile, looking at it from the perspective of the remote village. And they've been doing this connecting infrastructure, not only to connect upstream to the rest of the internet, but also to set up connections with each other, which obviously are important when you're spread out in a wide area. And we've identified initiatives like this in more than 40 developing countries so far, but not only in developed countries. In fact, many of these initiatives are also emerging in places where you think connectivity is fully available, such as New York City or Barcelona. But again, the issue is not just about connecting the unconnected, but also for better connections in terms of faster and cheaper. I mean, many of those 4.5 billion or so people around the world that are connected are really just barely connected, because in least developing countries in particular, the majority of people can't really even reach the affordability targets of the Mobile Broadband Commission to pay for the metered mobile data rate. So that connectivity gap is not only around literacy and useful services, but is also around the basic affordability issues around usage and the affordability of the devices. The ITU, as Dr. Ismail has already mentioned, has responded to this in a number of ways, including the Smart Villages initiative, which we've been helping to contribute on the blueprint document. But I'd like to draw your attention in particular to the WTDC 2017 event, where the ITU's recommendation D19 specifically focuses on small-scale initiatives to provide for rural and remote access, and encouraging governments around the world to put alternative models for providing this kind of access beyond the traditional national and rollout. So we developed an initiative to focus on this area in late 2017 in partnership with a Mexican NGO called Rhizomatica. And we've so far gained support from the governments of Canada, Sweden, and the United Kingdom to execute this program, which really basically focuses on the capacity building side to contribute to an enabling ecosystem for the growth of these community networks in developing countries. And this is capacity building from the point of view of not only the end user, but the technical community, and in particular the policy makers and regulators, who often need to change their policies to make it more conducive, and also development agencies in funding these programs. So in 2018, we spent a lot of time doing research to really document these community networks and identify the policy issues and what the strategic interventions might be. And in 2019 and this year, we've been focusing on capacity building and knowledge sharing, research and development for technical needs that haven't been met yet, and looking at various financial support programs. And in this area in particular, we're happy to be working with the Digital Access Program, and we're actually supporting their work in all 5 of the Prosperity Fund countries. So what is a community network? Typically, the 2 most prominent technologies in use are traditional Wi-Fi, but often set up in a mesh configuration, as you can see on the left. And then the other one is the traditional mobile network. There's this simple graphic illustration of a 900 megahertz waveband 2G or 2.5G GSM setup, which is probably still the most common, but mainly because of the regulatory issues around gaining spectrum. So the simplest way of looking at this is that a community will be...
Mike, sorry, we lost your presentation.
Oh, sorry. Let me start again. All right, can you see it okay? The typical wireless community network. So this is just really a cost-saving.
Sorry.
It's black, is it?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm getting that as well, Mike. I'm not. I think it might be everyone. We can hear you, but we just can't see what you're talking about.
Sorry. It's rather strange. It's a turn off video just to be with the bandwidth. Let's see about that. Are you able to see the screen now?
We can see now.
Hello?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
You can see the screen. Good. So yes, so simply the village will get together, put up a tower to be able to reach the remote village, share the cost of an uncapped broadband connection in the town, and then relay that to the local inhabitants via a hotspot. And this can bring down the cost very considerably. And people share the cost of the tower and the equipment and the maintenance and, of course, the energy supply. A couple of examples of this is TACnet or Net to Home in Thailand, which was initiated by the Asia Institute of Technology. And they've actually interestingly added an air pollution sensing network onto the community network, which is delivering very interesting data about air pollution, cross-border air pollution, in fact, from rice paddy fields. So that's providing very useful data that's of value beyond the community itself. Another example is this mobile access point set up for nomadic villages in the salt flats in India. And here is the example, most well-known mobile GSM network. There are about 20 of these networks now in the state of Oaxaca, serving about 60 localities with about 5,000 users a day, who spend about $2.50 per month for unlimited calls. And they were able to set up this network by obtaining a license from the regulator for social purpose networks serving these indigenous communities in Oaxaca. And then a similar project was established in the Philippines as a pilot project, which is subsequently closed, but now the government has announced an even bigger program to set up these small, independent, low-cost, open-source GSM base stations. What are some key observations from this? One is that there's an increased role for women in these networks, in not only in the deployment, but the maintenance and the operation and the staffing of them, and of course, as end users. Another aspect is that public access is often included because people can't necessarily afford their own devices, or they don't get the immersive training opportunities from a very small screen and low quality audio, or they need the facility for using peripheral devices like printers or laminators to preserve their study materials. And there's also strong links with community radio broadcasting. They often have the same social purpose. There may be a tower to use. There's probably reliable energy there. So we're seeing emerging unions between community broadcasters and community networks. And then the other one is innovative use of spectrum. This not only means using sharing spectrum for small scale mobile networks or getting your own allocation of spectrum, which so far has still proved difficult, although there are increasing number of pilot projects now, especially in Africa and Latin America. The other one is using technologies such as TV white space to get across the long hills or get through hills and through vegetation, as mentioned in an earlier presentation. It's a very valuable technology for linking up these areas that would be otherwise unable to connect. So what are the key success factors here? I think the main one, the human capacities I mentioned, not only among the community members themselves about how to deploy the network, but also among policymakers and regulators, that they need to understand that these networks are actually a feasible opportunity to address the connectivity gap in many areas, and also to know what kind of regulations need to be changed. And then, of course, the skills and knowledge is never going to be the adequate in these very far remote communities. So we need access to skills and knowledge from a group of organizations to provide that and support these community networks, many of which share these resources and the administration of their networks and the upstream licensing requirements, for example. And this is a picture of the well-known group of which I think many are probably present today. So just to wrap up, key constraints there, policy and regulatory, I think are the main ones aside from human capacity. So lack of access to spectrum, lack of affordable backhaul. All these small networks, the existing National Alliance compliance is very difficult in many cases. They don't have the capacity for the reporting, and the fees are obviously often not commensurate with a village level network. And there are many telecom and tax laws that don't recognize non-profit users as well, which is another issue. Then, of course, as I've mentioned about the lack of awareness, but it's not only technical skills, business and administration skills are needed, and some startup investment funds to get these networks going. So in conclusion, most networks we found have a strong champion or visionary behind them. There's usually the involvement of some technical support from one of the technical community members. We work extensively with the Internet Society and the regional internet registries, for example, and many universities are also supporting these networks and providing low-cost bandwidth. There's a wide range of technology now available. Off-the-shelf prices of a complete setup for a mobile base station now is around $5,000 or even less. And of course, you can set up a small community network for the cost of a couple of Wi-Fi routers at $100. Regulatory constraints are clearly the major barrier that needs to be addressed. And then, of course, lack of electricity supply is both a constraint and an opportunity. And I resonated with Warren's mention of the cross-sectoral approach here, where you can really share resources to bring both connectivity and electricity supply at the same time. And then the importance of scale is worth mentioning, because you really can reduce your costs by having a large number of people to share the costs of technical resources or the costs of a high site and a large mast, which is often one of the biggest cost constraints in establishing these networks. So I'll wrap it up there. There's a link there to the project and my email address, and happy to answer any questions or respond to any suggestions at any time. Thanks very much.
Thank you. This is Mike from APC. So he's actually working with us for this rural ICT camp, and in common room also. So our project shared in Kasupuan Cipta Gelap. So we both support common room and the community here. So the community networks have a strength in community awareness, or supportive policymakers and regulators, and also access skills and knowledge. But policy also becomes a challenge also for growing the community network. So next we will have Grace from Compact to share the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Aline. Let me share. Okay. Do you see the presentations?
Yes, it's on. Thank you.
Okay. Wait, I will change it into, yeah. Is it good look? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity for me and representing from Compact as a program to share what is our experience and practice, and maybe we all can share and yeah, from this one we can also learn each other. And I'm really glad and thank you, appreciate, because I can also learning from all of you on how is the challenges and some practices that you have been doing in the field, especially in the villages. So yeah, I would like to share one of our activities, one of the area that we are working in Compact, the village information systems. So yeah, basically our program is a collaboration G2G program executed in Bapenas as a government representative with a government of Australia through DFAT. So basically we are working on the 3 area with local government and services units, and with village governments, and as well as the sub-districts and the communities, especially targeting the poor and vulnerable. I think in this area, I found that we actually have the same objective on how to make the village development or village governance more inclusive for the communities. So while we are working to improve the sector outcomes, we are actually addressing the sector outcomes through our intermediate outcome. There are 4 intermediate outcomes that we are working for, and basically our intervention or our tools or our approach through these 4 area: the fiscal transfers, the sub-district village governance, social accountability and community engagement, and the sector governance. Village information systems is part of the activities that we are working, and this is basically we all know that because of the new village law, there is obligations that villages itself, they should build their own village information systems. Why village information system is not just the technology itself, but actually it's governance in the villages on how their development can addressing or then can answer in the villages who are missing out, what are the gaps in the development, how to better target resources to respond to these gaps. So yeah, that's the role of the strategic importance of the village information systems. Yeah, from our experience, Compact itself already been doing, implementing since 2015, and will be end by next 2 years. And we found through our experience working with the villages, there is data, but not reliable data collected by different stakeholders. Yeah, there are many data collected from villages, even for the same data, but many stakeholders trying to collect from the same villages. Data available but not accessed by community, but not used, mainly not used. And this can cause, by the end of the day, the program in the villages will be mistargeting, inefficient in terms of services and resources as well. And yeah, of course, there is no data, there is no information. It can be lack of transparency to the communities. It's already in the regulations, but our experience shows that village information systems actually can help villages for doing their administrations and reporting data, using data for evidence-based planning, budgeting, transparency, accountability, and monitor their results or the development itself. This is we are actually working in 7 provinces for and then also in Papua. And this is how we help local governments and villages to build their village information system, and how the data, the integration between the system and between the data resources in the districts. We are working with local government how to integrate and how to connect, and then and by the end of the day, how villages can also access and use the data information for them to be used for their services or their planning. We all know in the that during a COVID response, government has asked villages to use their village funds for the social assistance in the villages. So they need the data. So our work was to how to provide the unified data or the TKS to villages, and then villages then verify or collect the data and then use the data for the cash transfers in the villages, or they can report back to district, and then the district then use the data information for another cash transfer or another assistance from supra villages. Yeah, just to show you one of the example how villages use the data, the system in the villages. Of course, it should be based on the technology or the internet availability in the villages. But in some area, it is of course challenges. That's why we try to help local government and villages and build their system that can be running in the less access of the internet. So this is just the front of the system in the villages. Maybe we can also discuss a bit on in Papua, where in Papua we are working with province government, especially in West Papua, and we help them to develop a program, basically to work on how to collect and how to verify, and then how to help the Papuan tribes, and how to get their assistance using these special OTSUS funds from national. Yeah, in our work, we found that there are lesson learned, but also some practices, and we can share. One is, I guess, I think it is common, and it is also mentioned by you all, the previous resource, the previous presenter, that actually we need to have local leadership. We need to have champion who is really keen to work and to also have what is a future vision, that they want some change, they want some different things they can do to help their communities. So we found that local leadership is very important, and of course collaboration. Compact is just small program, of course, compared to this nation, compared to the government, but how to work collaboratively is the key things. And yeah, we found that government or supra villages should provide the information first with the villages. It can be incentive for villages to then wanting to use the technology, because they know what's the benefit for them. And we found that leadership also matters in the villages, and how they really want to change the village meetings for the discussion for village development, or even for the discussion of the recipients of the village cash transfers. Yeah, we found also if the local government, in this case, the district government, provides services through the online services. In this case, we have example for the civil registrations. It could be helping villages to also contribute to improve the coverage of having the legal identity in the villages, because here in Indonesia we still have problems with the legal identity coverage, especially for those in the villages. We also found, of course, that community involvement in the data collection, in the verification, or even in the discussion in the village meetings on the target for the development or even the social assistance, it would be effective for village development themselves. Yeah, we've also found that updating and alignment of beneficiaries of social assistance program can be used this technology platform. We found that if government has intersector, they have different data, but then it can be processed through a system, and then villages can also be provided with the data. It will also benefit to district government for their more bigger program, or for their program that they can align the program in the sub-district or even in the district level with the villages using the same data. So having the same data is very important. Currently, we are working with Bappenas as a planning body and learning from the COVID pandemic. Now Bappenas really think that this is very important to digitalize the data, and of course, one of them is the monographic data. It is the population data in the villages. So currently, we are working with Bappenas to develop the design and trying to pilot the program. Consists of how to interconnect data, how to share the data to the villages, and then villages can access and then updating the data, and they use the data for their own purposes, in this case for their own planning. We also working to how to develop their capacity. The capacity also include in that is how to have the policy or local regulations that can also provide enabling environment for villages or communities to access the data and informations. And Bappenas already plan to scale out if the pilot is have a success point. So this is what we are doing. Yeah, and maybe just to show you the use of technology, the use of digital system in the villages, it can. We found that it really helped villages to improve their planning. They can, if for example, the district government provide the data for or information through the technology platform, villages can access it. They can easily understand what is the priority, national priority, province priority, district priority, and they can align their program. So basically, this is what I'm sharing, and yeah, it would be very good if we can have further discussions on the technology things or even our experience in the field. Thank you, Aline.
Thank you, Mbak Grace. So Compact is sharing about village information system. So they also share with us that the the problem is also on collecting the data, that sometimes data is not reliable, that many data collected, redundant process to collect the data, which burden the village administrative, and which also cause risk in transparency and mistargeting for the social aid. So I'm also will call the World Bank, Linga Suyut. If you here, please share your presentation, Mbak Linga.
Okay, thank you. My presentation is with Mbak Rati. If Mbak Rati could help share. So,
okay, it's shared.
Yeah. So thank you for this opportunity this afternoon. I am here with my colleague Hera. She is also here, but due to the time limit, so we decided we're going to take turns. I will be presenting and she will be available for the discussion as well. Well, we've been asked to share our village innovation program, which was this was a cooperation with the Ministry of Villages. It was just closed in December 2019. This project was basically to respond to results of PNPM and also the increasing village funds that villages are getting. But they have weak development planning still. And meanwhile, there are also villages that do have initiatives, they have good ideas, they're more advanced in thinking, but not many other villages know what these other villages have done. So village innovation program in terms of digital technology, it was not a digitalization project. It was basically how to help villages create better quality in their development and implementation plans. Next slide, Mbak Rati. So what is the Village Innovation Program? Our coverage location was in all 33 provinces of Indonesia, all districts, all sub-districts, and all village, central, provincial, and district and village levels. The aim for this program was to improve village capacity in developing quality village development and implementation plan, help them to allocate village transfers, meet local or village development needs that will also reflect national development priorities, and especially in the priority areas of infrastructure, entrepreneurship, and human capital, and also help villages improve high quality plans to implement activities. This program was designed by setting up a knowledge sharing system where villages are taught to document their development plan innovations, to share and exchange them in a village exchange forum or Bursa Inovasi Desa, we call it BID, for villages where to have reference for their development and implementation plans, and also get technical support from professional technical service providers. So this system helped connected villages within distances. We learned villages in Sulawesi who learned from a village in Papua and replicated their experience in Sulawesi. So these villages from far away can learn from each other how to create better development plans. So this project was to answer villages when they receive these large amounts of village funds, to answer to their questions on what do we propose and can we do this or that? Is it allowed by village funds? So when there are other villages who have used the village funds for certain activities that other villages have doubts, based on these references, they can copy the same experience. And the innovations that villages share are new practices or new ways of developing their villages using village funds, and not necessarily high tech. That's for the village level, and in the executive level of the ministry, the project also provided executive and management level support. We worked with echelons 1 and 2 of the ministry on an executive transformation capacity development series. Also provided support for auditory system and communication strategy of the ministry. Next, Marathi. These are the 4 project components. The village, there were 4 project components. The first 3, 1A, 1B, and 2 were the ones to answer the project purposes of the villages, to provide support on the answering villages in providing better quality development plans. Project component 3 was the management support for the executive level of the ministry. We worked in the 3 priority areas that were set by the ministry on entrepreneurship and local economic development, human resources, and village infrastructure. Next. And the results at the closing of the project in December 2019, we achieved most of our goals, most of the objectives, where the village exchange forum was almost 100%. It was not 100% because some villages had trouble with changes of village heads and changes of the bupati, etc. And in the village exchange forums, villages, when they leave the forum, they have to submit 2 cards. One is the innovation card and another is the replication card. The innovation card is for villages to, after they leave the forum, they can write down what they think they have done that they think is innovative. They can write down their projects that they think are innovative, write it down, write the title, and submit the card to the forum committee. So the committee can analyze and decide whether to what to do with these titles, whether to document them or store them in a database. The replication cards are when villagers go into the forum, they see a menu of innovations that have been done by other villages. So they come to the forum, they see this menu, and they can write down which idea that they want to replicate in their village using their village funds. And so they submit also these replication cards. And village participation have been almost 100%. Women participation in the village exchange forum was still low. This was a stable number from start to finish, still below 50%, and that's something to be analyzed by colleagues. And also the technical service providers have also been much involved in the exchange forums and also providing support to the villages in coaching them and creating better development plans, what technical support that they need. Next. And outputs of the project, one major output was the knowledge sharing mechanism through the village exchange forum, where villages can learn from each other. The project created guidelines on how to do these forums, videos, shared through these cascading networks of the Ministry of Villages. And some villages have also continued on with this mechanism, but due to COVID, it seems they have stopped because they have to focus on COVID response. And another output was a 3-year series of curated learning documents. So whatever the village have written down, when they have documented their innovations, a list of these, and these documents are sent to the Ministry of Villages, and Ministry of Villages set up a team to evaluate these documents, analyze which ones are national level innovations and which ones are very local. National level means the innovations, the ideas can be adapted or replicated by any village in the country. And local means it can be found anywhere in the country, but for certain districts or sub-districts, they're very special. And we've also produced a directory of technical service providers that villages can search from and select services based on their needs, and also training modules. The project conducted cascading trainings through the Ministry of Villages consultants. This was before COVID, so everything was still very traditional. Cascading training from province, we trained provincial level consultants, and then they train provincial level consultants and district and sub-district and village level consultants and so on. Next. And by the end of 2019, at the end of the project, we found there were still some challenges exiting from the project. One major challenge was how to integrate these knowledge sharing practices that had already been put in place by the project as part of the regular village planning cycle. So, okay, sorry, one more minute. And also massive replication, how there could be more replications between villages, and also a dedicated platform had not been there by the project for the innovations and exchanges. Everything was still manual. So this is a challenge that I think a lot of colleagues can answer to also. Next, this is for the digitalization. The World Bank is planning a new project to accommodate the needs that was produced by the Village Innovation Program. But this is still under discussion with the Ministry of Villages and Ministry of Home Affairs. The next slides are photos. I think I don't need to explain these, but these are photos as visualization of what the project had implemented. That's from us. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ma. Okay, so I think that's all for all the panelists from donors. So I would like to call Pak Odi from Direktur Layanan TI Badan Usaha, Director of IT Service and Business Entity, Baktikom Info, Ministry of ICT. Thank you, Pak Odi. Pak Odi.
Ya.
Oke, siap.
Terima kasih. Selamat sore, Bapak Ibu sekalian yang saya hormati. Terima kasih atas kesempatannya. Kali ini saya ingin membagi atau update progres terhadap apa yang dikerjakan oleh Bakti sebagai bagian dari Kementerian Kominfo terkait dengan upaya pembangunan di desa untuk menciptakan konektivitas secara mandiri. Baik, saya share screen ya. Sorry, ada iklan ya. Oke. Baik, saya harap sudah bisa melihat screen share yang saya sampaikan. Baik, jadi saya di Bakti secara khusus memiliki tugas membantu Pak Anang Latif khusus untuk membuka kesempatan kerjasama dengan para pihak dalam rangka penyelesaian digital melalui kerjasama badan usaha dan bagaimana hubungannya dengan inisiatif-inisiatif yang dikerjakan oleh Bakti, baik itu bidang infrastruktur maupun ekosistem digital. Jadi secara umum saya akan membagi menjadi 4 bagian. Yang pertama adalah bagaimana ICT sebagai bagian yang mensupport desa digital atau desa memanfaatkan teknologi telekomunikasi dan informatika. Kemudian yang kedua, bagian kedua adalah bagaimana broadband connectivity pada akhirnya bisa disediakan secara mandiri oleh komunitas di desa. Kemudian yang ketiga, kami punya use case yang juga merupakan Center of Excellence dari kegiatan ini yang bertempat di Desa Mandala Mekar di Jawa Barat, Kabupaten Tasikmalaya. Kemudian yang keempat, saya akan share konklusi dari apa yang kami kerjakan hari ini dan ke depan. Jadi sebagai background utama dari aktivitas membangun tech ICT di desa, itu adalah yang pertama merupakan spirit dari nawacita Pak Presiden Jokowi sejak periode yang lalu sampai dengan hari ini, bahwa bagaimana percepatan pembangunan infrastruktur termasuk telekomunikasi di dalamnya juga dimulai tidak hanya di desa, tidak hanya di kota, tapi juga di area border maupun area terluar dari wilayah Republik Indonesia. Kemudian yang kedua, kami memanfaatkan teknologi-teknologi terkini yang semula baik itu berbasis mobile broadband maupun fixed broadband. Saat ini untuk mobile broadband kami coba fokus pengembangan hampir seluruhnya menjadi konektivitas berbasis 4G. Kemudian tentunya perkembangan teknologi itu nantinya juga akan punya pengaruh kepada peningkatan ekonomi, khususnya ekonomi berbasis digital, yang hari ini merupakan satu tren utama bahwa pengembangan ekonomi juga bisa dilakukan secara sharing dari apa yang kita punya. Hal ini juga kita coba untuk membangun komunitas ekosistem digital tidak hanya di kota namun juga di desa. Kemudian yang keempat adalah bagaimana kita melihat demand dari program ini yang juga diminati oleh teman-teman dari kementerian lembaga lain dan juga private sector yang sebenarnya sudah, kalau di private sector kami melihat kejenuhan pasar di kota mengakibatkan adanya kanibalisme terhadap market, tapi masih begitu banyak demand tersedia di desa yang private sector ini membutuhkan informasi dan dukungan pemerintah lebih lanjut untuk bisa menyediakan layanan di sana. Jadi dari keempat aspek ini, semangat yang ingin digerakkan oleh Pak Presiden adalah bagaimana seluruh lapisan masyarakat yang tertinggal maupun yang berada di area border atau di pulau terluar itu merasa bahwa merupakan bagian dari negara Republik Indonesia dan menikmati dari hasil pembangunan. Slide ini mencoba untuk menerangkan bahwa inisiatif yang dilakukan oleh Bakti di bidang ICT, infrastruktur maupun ekosistem digital pada baris pertama yang nomor 1 adalah menerangkan mandat Universal Service Obligation Concept yang sudah diberlakukan sejak tahun 1999 berdasarkan Undang-Undang Nomor 36 tentang Telekomunikasi. Jadi seluruh penyelenggara telekomunikasi, baik jaringan maupun jasa, memiliki kewajiban sebagai agen pembangunan bagi pemerintah dan juga membuka kesempatan bagi para private sector untuk menjadi penyelenggara dengan melibatkan investasi dari lokal maupun luar negeri. Jadi kalau boleh saya ceritakan sejarahnya, sebelum Undang-Undang Nomor 36 ini diberlakukan, penyelenggara telekomunikasi itu sifatnya monopoli atau hanya dimiliki oleh perusahaan milik negara. Setelah undang-undang ini diberlakukan, maka penyelenggaraan telekomunikasi dibuka secara bebas atau rezim kompetisi dimulai, sehingga lahirlah banyak penyelenggara telekomunikasi baik jaringan maupun jasa yang beroperasi di Indonesia. Terhadap penyelenggaraan tersebut, setiap pemilik lisensi itu diberikan kewajiban untuk membangun service obligation berdasarkan ketentuan-ketentuan ini. Nah, akibatnya adalah dari seluruh wilayah Republik Indonesia, dari Sabang sampai Merauke, dari Pulau Rote sampai di Miangas, ternyata meninggalkan area non-commercially visible, area yang dalam lingkaran itu di merah yang di atas. Jadi setelah puluhan tahun rezim kompetisi ini diberikan, maka ternyata ada area yang secara tidak ekonomis itu tidak dibangun oleh teman-teman penyelenggara telekomunikasi. Oleh sebab itu, berdasarkan ketentuan yang berlaku, kita turun ke line yang nomor 2, bahwa di dalam ketentuan itu, apabila mereka tidak ingin memberikan pembangunan langsung berupa fisik dan layanan di daerah-daerah yang tidak komersial secara ekonomi, maka mereka harus membayar yang namanya USO obligation non-tax, atau kita sebutnya dengan penerimaan negara bukan pajak dari kontribusi USO penyelenggara telekomunikasi. Nah, sumber dana inilah yang di-manage dan dikelola oleh Bakti dari sejak tahun 2006 sampai dengan hari ini sebagai modal utama inisiatif pemerintah untuk menjalankan trigger untuk membuka market di daerah-daerah non-commercially visible yang tidak dibangun oleh penyelenggara telekomunikasi. Saya lanjut ke slide berikutnya. Jadi ini adalah resume dari Bakti, bahwa kami adalah badan layanan umum yang bergerak di public service agency dan pembiayaan dalam bidang telekomunikasi. Kemudian besaran dana yang kami kelola dari kontribusi USO sebesar 1,25% dari annual gross revenue setiap penyelenggara telekomunikasi. Jadi kami memiliki visi sebagai organisasi yang berusaha untuk mempersempit adanya digital divide dan untuk memberikan layanan trigger berbasis telekomunikasi dengan memanfaatkan kebijakan USO yang ditetapkan oleh pemerintah. Baik, selanjutnya secara umum ada 6 program utama yang kami lakukan di Bakti, termasuk infrastruktur dan ekosistem digital. Jadi yang pertama dari penyediaan mobile broadband, kami bekerja sama dengan penyelenggara jaringan bergerak seluler, beberapa operator mobile broadband yang memiliki coverage nasional. Kemudian yang kedua, kami juga menyediakan koneksi atau resource berupa satelit. Ini kami sangat perlukan karena mayoritas dari wilayah yang tidak layak secara ekonomis tadi itu adalah wilayah-wilayah yang secara teknologi tidak dapat dijangkau dengan terestrial, baik itu fiber optic maupun radio link, sehingga transport menggunakan satelit adalah merupakan hal yang mutlak. Kemudian yang ketiga, kami juga menyediakan internet akses. Ini adalah layanan akses point berupa internet akses ke public service, diantaranya di sekolah maupun di puskesmas, ada juga di kantor desa, di balai desa, bahkan sampai ke balai latihan kerja yang dikelola oleh Kementerian Tenaga Kerja. Kemudian kami juga involve di bidang broadcasting, support kepada LPP TVRI dan LPP RRI dalam penyediaan transmitter berbasis digital untuk mendukung percepatan analog switch off dari analog ke digital. Kemudian selanjutnya kami juga punya program palaparing. Mungkin Bapak Ibu pernah mendengar Palaparing ini adalah program backbone nasional, hadir di 57 ibu kota kabupaten yang sifatnya melengkapi dari backbone existing yang dibangun oleh penyelenggara jaringan, sehingga kita bisa katakan seluruh ibu kota kabupaten di Indonesia sudah memiliki backbone berbasis pita lebar. Sehingga tugas selanjutnya adalah bagaimana mengembangkan backhaul dan juga mengembangkan akses ke lokasi-lokasi atau ke desa-desa yang menjadi prioritas atau demand yang bisa dipenuhi oleh teman-teman penyelenggara jaringan dan jasa. Kemudian tidak lupa kami juga punya kegiatan yang berbasis ekosistem digital. Di sini secara umum adalah berbentuk pelatihan penyediaan aplikasi yang tadi sudah, yang kira-kira serupa dari apa yang tadi sudah dijelaskan juga oleh Bapak dan Ibu pemateri sebelumnya. Baik. Kemudian ini adalah peta secara nasional dan highlight dari volume program-program infrastruktur yang kami sediakan di seluruh Indonesia. Jadi kalau di slide sebelumnya menggambarkan jenis programnya, kalau di slide saat ini menggambarkan berapa besar volume-volume yang kita kerjakan. Jadi kalau bisa dilihat ada garis berwarna hitam, hijau, kemudian merah, itu adalah jalur-jalur backbone yang ada di Indonesia, kemudian yang dot warna merah dan dot warna merah di dalamnya itu adalah kota-kota SLA yang dilayani oleh backbone Palaparing. Ini gambaran umum penetrasi program utama yang ada di Bakti dari Sumatera sampai dengan Papua. Kalau melihat jumlah total BTS signal yang hari ini sudah digelar oleh Bakti sejak tahun 2015 sejumlah 1.600 titik yang mayoritas ditempatkan di wilayah Indonesia Timur, khususnya di Papua dan Papua Barat. Begitupun program akses internet dari 7.542 titik, mayoritas kami tempatkan juga di Papua dan Papua Barat. Jadi memang secara sifat geografisnya, desa-desa yang masuk dalam kategori prioritas kegiatan kami memang hampir 60% ada di Papua dan Papua Barat.
Oke, mohon maaf Pak Odi, sudah habis waktunya. Oh, ya,
kemudian ini adalah update dari pemetaan terakhir yang kami lakukan untuk upaya penyelesaian menghadirkan konektivitas mobile broadband dan juga fixed broadband untuk 2 tahun mendatang. Jadi kami mengidentifikasi ada 7.904 desa yang masuk dalam kategori tertinggal, terluar, yang harus diintervensi oleh pemerintah untuk menghadirkan konektivitas broadband. Jadi kalau kita lihat yang warna merah dan yang warna kuning, itu adalah bagian-bagian yang memang sedang dikerjakan oleh Bakti.
Odi, mohon maaf, waktunya sudah.
Sedangkan ada area yang non 3T region, ini kami berharap penyelenggara telekomunikasi secara komersial nantinya bisa hadir untuk menyelesaikan pemenuhan konektivitas broadband di 3.435 yang berwarna biru. Sehingga di tahun 2022, sesuai dengan cita-cita tadi dari Pak Menteri Kominfo, seluruh desa sudah memiliki konektivitas broadband mobile setidaknya berbasis 4G.
Oke, terima kasih Pak Odi.
Kemudian peta ini menggambarkan masih terkait dengan slide sebelumnya. Jadi kalau seluruh Indonesia memiliki jumlah desa sebanyak 83.218 desa dan telah tercover layanan 4G mobile sebanyak 70.670 desa. Kemudian masih ada menyisakan sekitar 12.548 desa yang belum memiliki mobile broadband, dibagi menjadi dua karakteristik, daerah 3T dan non 3T, maka kami melihat Bakti akan punya tugas untuk menyelesaikan yang 9.113 desa. Sedangkan yang 3.435 yang tadi saya katakan, kami di pemerintah sedang berdiskusi dengan teman-teman penyelenggara mobile broadband untuk menyelesaikan atau memberikan layanan-layanan mobile broadband secara komersial di daerah-daerah yang non 3T tadi. Baik, saya lanjut ke slide berikutnya.
Pak Odi.
Jadi kalau kita melihat dari jumlah data yang kami terima dari usulan kementerian lembaga, bahwa masih terdapat kurang lebih 150.000 titik yang memerlukan konektivitas broadband di daerah-daerah 3T tersebut. Terdiri dari sekolah, kemudian kantor desa, ada juga kantor polisi maupun kantor koramil yang membutuhkan internet sebagai support terhadap back office yang mendukung pertahanan dan keamanan. Untuk itu kami menyiapkan program satelit yang tadi merupakan bagian dari program utama yang kita sebut dengan namanya Satria. Satria ini adalah kependekan dari Satelit Republik Indonesia yang nantinya akan melakukan servisnya pada tahun 2023 dengan kapasitas 150 Gbps. Kemudian kami rencanakan juga sampai Satria ketiga dengan kapasitas 500 Gbps yang diharapkan bisa memberikan dan melayani lebih banyak dan lebih besar bandwidth dari setiap titik-titik poin yang menjadi target atau usulan dari Kementerian Lembaga dalam penyediaan layanan broadband internet. Kemudian karena USO ini adalah satu inisiatif trigger yang kita lakukan, maka kami berharap di kemudian hari nanti desa-desa atau lokasi yang disediakan oleh program USO ini bisa bertransformasi menjadi desa-desa yang atau wilayah-wilayah yang bisa secara mandiri atau komersial secara bisnis pada akhirnya. Sehingga beban pemerintah atau tugas pemerintah untuk menyediakan infrastruktur fisik telekomunikasi itu bisa secara perlahan diambil alih oleh penyelenggara telekomunikasi dengan skema bisnis yang layak. Jadi kami melihat bahwa yang disebut dengan broadband connectivity itu adalah keniscayaan atau sudah menjadi kebutuhan yang tidak dapat ditolak lagi. Terutama dengan adanya pandemi COVID-19 ini menyebabkan seluruh aspek-aspek kehidupan, baik itu dari sisi pendidikan, kemudian dari tentunya kesehatan, kemudian dari public service pemerintah, baik itu dari level desa sampai ke level pusat.
Pak Odi, maaf. Pak Odi, maaf. Pak Odi, maaf, waktunya sudah habis, Pak.
Kalau terkait dengan bidang pertanian,
Mungkin kepada Common Room bisa tolong di stop share Pak Odi, mungkin sepertinya ada gangguan. Terima kasih. Okay, sorry everyone. There's a trouble I think in the connection. Common Room hostnya tolong di turn off aja dan di mute. Oke, terima kasih semuanya yang sudah hadir. Sebelumnya, mungkin sebelum kita tutup acaranya, kita bisa foto bersama. Thank you everyone for attending. So far, it's been a good presenting. We should have more time to discuss our views and what can we collaborate. But I think so little time. So perhaps we can all stand by in your webcam. We will take a photo call together and I will count. Thank you. Please turn on your camera. Thank you. I will count. 1, 2, and front of your camera. Okay. Thank you. 1, 2, 3. Okay. One more time. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you, everyone. I think we have a lot of things that we can collaborate, and I see there's so many potentials, especially when the program, most of the programs, when they want to end, maybe we can continue to support your achievement, and we can collaborate also later. I think we need a more time to discuss this. So thank you for our panel. Let's keep coordinating to close the digital gap. I'm so sorry that we have only very limited time for this gathering. Mohon maaf karena keterbatasan waktu, kami harus akhiri kumpul bareng donor dan organisasi filantropi untuk mengatasi kesenjangan digital di Indonesia. British Embassy Jakarta sangat senang atas kehadiran rekan semua. Selama 3 hari ini, Rural ICT Camp akan membahas sinergi langkah untuk pengembangan inovasi desa dan internet berbasis masyarakat. Saksikan siaran langsung di YouTube commonroom_id. Dalam pengembangan Learning Center Kasepuan Cipta Gelar, kami juga akan mengadakan MOU mengelola Learning Center yang akan ditandatangani Common Room, Kasepuan Cipta Gelar, Awinet, Relawan TIK, ICT Watch, Medco Foundation, dan STT Garut. Rural ICT Camp besok akan menggelar diskusi penanganan COVID-19 di level desa bersama Mitra Digital Access Program Lapor COVID-19. Semoga kita semua diberikan kesehatan dalam pandemi ini, dan semoga COVID-19 segera berlalu. Saksikan terus Rural ICT Camp. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, perhaps we will invite you later for more discussions.
Be happy to participate. Thanks, everyone. Really
Happy
good.
to. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for your time, guys.
It's,
Thank you. Bye-bye.